eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. There is a saying in chapter 1 of the Gospel of St. John that would seem to respond with a definite no to the question, can man see God? The saying is this: no man had seen God at any time, the only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. Many great saints, however, claim to have seen God. If we ask then, can God be seen? Rather than, can man see God? The answer is yes. Else those saints lied, and else the scriptures themselves lie. The point is, it is not man, this human body, these human eyes that sees God. God can be seen only with spiritual vision, with the eye of the soul. As the Bhagavad Gita puts it in the 11th chapter, thou canst not see me with mortal eyes, therefore I now give thee sight divine. Behold my supreme power of yoga. With these words, Hari, the exalted Lord of Yoga, revealed himself to Arjuna in his infinite form. Paramahansa Yogananda, in Autobiography of a Yogi, describes the supernal experience in words more readily comprehensible to modern minds than the poetic phraseology of the Bhagavad Gita. The chapter, An Experience in Cosmic Consciousness, is one of the most inspiringly beautiful in all mystical literature. Here's a brief excerpt. An oceanic joy broke upon calm, endless shores of my soul. The Spirit of God, I realized, is exhaustless bliss. His body is countless tissues of light. I saw the divine dispersion of rays pour from an eternal source, blazing into galaxies, transfigured with ineffable auras. Again and again, I saw the creative beams condense into constellations, then resolve into sheets of transparent flame. By rhythmic reversion, 6 trillion worlds passed into diaphanous luster. Fire became firmament. I cognized the center of the Empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my heart. Irradiating splendor issued from my nucleus to every part of the universal structure. The creative voice of God I heard, resounding as Om, the vibration of the cosmic motor. This, so great masters aver, is what God is, and this is also, they insist, what we are in our deepest reality. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. My son was 3 or 4 years old when once I had to play in a small church in Abruzzo my violin. So I was warming up my violin together with the guitarist in the sacristy behind the altar rooms of the church, and my son was roaming around, and at a certain point he stops in front of a great crucifix, which like it was this huge crucifix with Jesus, with blood and suffering. And my son didn't have a religious formation. He didn't receive that from us. I think it was the first time he saw Jesus on the cross. He stopped and he was a little shocked, and he said, "Look what I've done to him." And so did he see God in that moment? I don't think so. I think he had a human reaction, normal, natural, to an expression, an outward expression of God. When I've heard many people criticizing that part of Christian religion that exalts the suffering and the sin. So the crucifix was a symbol for this, for the suffering. But why not expressing the joy of divine presence instead of our sin, our incapacity of seeing, of connecting with this divine joy? So don't think that we just came back from a very intense and beautiful pilgrimage. Just yesterday we came back, a pilgrimage to India. Some of my travel companions are here now, others are following probably online. So don't think that the image of God that they give in India are very happy. Some yes, others a little less. For example, the image of Mother Kali, Divine Mother, if you don't know what is behind it, you could have a similar reaction like the one my son had. Oh my God, what is this? Who is this? So I want to read to you for a moment how Yogananda explains this representation of Mother Kali. So we will go from the superficial image to the consciousness, to the power behind the representation. Because when you are a yogi, you need always to search for what is behind. You need to search for the perception in your heart for what is behind the outward image. So in this book, The Essence of Self-Realization, a visitor of Mount Washington says to Yogananda, but how is it that all these Indian divinities, there are too many? And Yogananda says, yes, you might be right, but what he then explains is that all these images, it's not so much about what God is, but what God does. And then he says, take for example the image of the goddess Kali, who is maybe the less understood, especially in the West. And first of all, her right foot is stepping on the chest of her husband, of Shiva. So Shiva is lying down and she is standing with her foot on his chest. So we're starting well, right? Then she is not brushed. She hasn't a very brushed hair, so she has her hair all over, which makes her very. I like her because of that. And then she wears a necklace of dead heads around her neck, and in her hand she holds a sword, and in her other hand a decapitated head. And then what about her tongue? Usually she is shown with a red tongue that comes out of her mouth as if she was wanting to bite someone like bloodfully. But Yogananda describes this outward image, and so this guest is a little shocked, and then he explains. Kali represents Mother Nature. She is Om, the cosmic vibration. Everything exists in this sound of Om, matter, energy, thoughts of all beings that have consciousness. And that's why she has this garland of skulls of heads around her, which shows that she is invisibly present in all minds. The joy of life and death shows the activity of her in nature, creation, preservation, and destruction. That's why she's holding the sword. The skull, the head that she has in her hand, and then she has a third hand that gives life. Her energy is omnipresent, which is why she's not brushed. Her hair just goes all over the place. This represents her energy. Her husband Shiva represents God in the state beyond vibration, which is why he is lying down in Shavasana, which is my favorite yoga posture, and also the moment of yoga, any yoga class I love most. So her husband is lying down and she's stepping on him, and Kali has this tongue out, because I could see with my eyes that when in India a person feels a little bit embarrassed, they take their tongue out if they feel they've done something wrong. So why is Divine Mother feeling she did something wrong? It's because in her cosmic dance that she represents, she might have stepped a bit too much forward, putting one foot on her husband's chest, and so maybe she says, oh my god, maybe I've gone too far here, that's been a bit too much. So that's why she has her tongue out. It represents that she understands she's stepped a little bit too much forward, and she has another hand which is moving forward towards the devotees. And so her devotees, or those who love her or who want to try to love her ever deeper, if you sit on her hand, you are at the center of the storms. You are one with her. You become one with this beautiful process of life and death, creation and preservation, of destruction, of everything that we see around us. And that doesn't let us be calm, because with our mind reasoning we cannot arrive there. But if we sit on the extended hand of our marvelous Mother Kali, we find ourselves at the center of life's storms, and then everything becomes intuitively clear. So it was important to understand, we've said before, that effectively the Hindu religion is full of images of gods and goddesses of all kinds. But why? Swami Kriyananda has written a beautiful book on Hindu art, which is called The Hindu Way of Awakening. And he says that Westerners who came to India saw this as idols, but in effect they are not this, they are ideals. So they are connected to the emotions of the moment, to a state of temporary consciousness which is present. For example, Jews, when Moses went to the Sinai mountain to talk with God, they forgot and they started to they created a huge golden calf which represents attachment, desires for money, desire for power, and they would perform dances which shows that there was a great sexual expression also in what they did. And these are all emotions that are there. Probably something of this we all have inside in our subconscious minds, which is why we are on a spiritual path, because we want to overcome this. But if you, instead of transcending this, you empower these habits, then you get into a sea of confusion, and it could even lead you to depression. There's something within us that tends to take very seriously what we feel, our feelings, our momentary emotions. I remember a friend of mine from my childhood. He did not follow any spiritual path like you and I did. Maybe he did something else. We don't talk about this. But when we were both very young, I saw in him, compared to myself, a certain centeredness which I didn't have. I was very insecure. And at a certain point, we had beautiful conversations, philosophical conversations about life. And he would say, I think you can do beautiful things in life, but you need to not be controlled and influenced by the momentary emotions. And this friend said this to me not to be paternal or teach me something. It was just a very spontaneous observation of his, which always has kept with me. So, in order to not remain attached to the present state of emotional consciousness in which we find ourselves, we need something that pulls us out of the state, an ideal. The word ideal is linked to the word idea, and in yoga we describe the, let's say, the antique teachings of Sanatana Dharma. They describe three worlds. The first world is the world of ideas, in which God starts thinking. So that's a world very close to God, where his thoughts in the purest form live. The second world is the astral world, where energy comes into place, for example, the energy of Kali. And then the third world, which is the material world, where everything gets a solid form. But the greatest inspirations of man at all levels, political, social, spiritual, artistic fields, literature, but also in the field of conducting your daily life, whatever it is. All the greatest inspirations come like flashes from this world of ideas, which is called the causal world. So also having ideals on which we can focus helps us somehow to expand our feeling. So the focus is very important. Swami always said, you or your mind becomes or gives you what you focus on. So if I focus a lot on myself, on my present state of consciousness, which is maybe a little depressed or indifferent or unrestless or restless, because I want this, I want that, and I don't want this or I don't want that. If I focus on that state, then I will remain there. That's what I get. So thus I will live with a contracted sense. But if I focus, even if I don't feel it yet, on something bigger than myself, if I tell myself, this is only my little pathetic self, my little ego, but there is more, and then you let yourself expand to that instead of having your energy in this subconscious state. Let yourself concentrate on something bigger, and you can do that through meditation, through practicing japa, continuously chanting one of the million names of God. In India, I've learned from Shantidev a very powerful mantra of Kali, and wherever I'd go, I chant this mentally. And at a certain point, when we went to Babaji's cave, or Lahiri's cave, you can also call it the cave of Lahiri Mahashaya, high up in the Himalaya, after having meditated there, I felt inspired to continuously calling the name of Lahiri Mahashaya, Om Lahiri Mahashaya, Om Lahiri Mahashaya. It came spontaneously to me. All the time I chanted until I felt that this great master, in his body of light, even in the chaos of daily life, in the train station at the capital of India, I could feel his body of light able to absorb all of our karma like a divine instrument that draws towards it all our karma. And this experience I had through the focus of japa, which was not focusing on my present state, which might have been not so concentrated, but no, I said, I want this divine idea. I want to focus on something close to God, and I will use my willpower, I will use constancy, and I will use all my heart to focus on this divine state. And thus, at a certain point, we, on this pilgrimage, we went to the temple of Dakshineshwar, close to Calcutta. And that's a temple that has become famous for various reasons. One, because if I'm not mistaken, it has been built in honor of a great master, Ramakrishna, who often used to meditate there, and he had moments there of great ecstasy. And then it became famous also because Yogananda describes in his autobiography of a yogi that there, after a long meditation in front of the statue of Kali, which we have just described, Yogananda enters into a superior state of consciousness and receives an answer to a prayer for another person, a very dramatic answer, very important answer, and very beautiful. So this temple, we knew, vibrates with divine energy. So if you see this only from a religious point of view, you see many people who go there, and also as in Catholic Church, people might pray the rosary, and maybe some people are not even concentrated but distracted, or they do it like an economic action. I pray 10 rosaries and I get back my blessing or something like that. So in India also you could see people who go in this temple with a similar attitude, but we went there as yogis, as our group. So within us we try to perceive the world not through social schemes or religious schemes, through our senses, not even through how we are made personally, but we try to perceive the world through an inner state of consciousness, of calm and deep consciousness. So when I found myself in this temple, first of all, I had a beautiful experience before, because before entering into meditation, I went to the central part and I didn't. All of my companions received a little blessing on the forehead. I didn't receive anything, but it was beautiful anyway. And then I walked around this central temple, and I walked through a little gate. I just felt myself drawn to it. And then a man came towards me and said, "Closed, closed." And then he looked at me, and I also had an Om board with me and a mala, and he said, "Oh, meditation, go." And so I entered through this little gate and meditated there in the central temple. And later I went to meditate where most of the pilgrimage group was meditating, which it is at in a place where Yogananda used to meditate, in a nearby temple. And I wanted to absorb myself more with Kali, and so I looked at myself very honestly, and I asked myself on my emotional needs. Because Yogananda says, once you realize God, there is a sort of divine emotional self-sufficiency, because God Himself satisfies all of our needs of love, of affection. Sometimes God even caresses you. So I made myself an introspection, and I realized I hadn't arrived yet to this point. I realized that within me there are many needs of affection, of love, of being secured and reassured, especially from a divine feminine place. The feminine as the mother is more important for our emotional life. So I realized that I had a lot of lackings there. So I said, okay, now I meditate with you, Mother Kali, and I want you to give me divine self-sufficiency, emotional self-sufficiency. And so in the meditation I practice a lot of Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga is the great gift that our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda gives us. And I tried to cut with the sword of Kali through all my attachments, through all my needs, and something beautiful happened. I cannot say that when I came out of my meditation I had this divine emotional self-sufficiency. I cannot say this, but I felt a little bit more of lightness in my emotional sphere, and I felt a little more light, and I could perceive a little bit God like Mother, who really gives us everything we need if we open up completely to her and if we focus on her. Then something comes to us. So something came to me, and I thank for that, because it shows us the importance of a pilgrimage as an expression of devotion, of love. I also want to share another experience with you, which happened in Varanasi. Varanasi is a city full of contrasts. And the most striking contrast I lived in the ashram, I experienced in the ashram of Ananda Moima. We from Ananda, and I think all devotees of Paramahansa Yogananda, disciples of Paramahansa Yogananda, have a relationship with Ananda Moima. So we went to the ashram I went once with the group and once alone. And also there I told myself, but I see the picture and I see a Hindu woman. I want to go beyond. I want to feel what's behind that picture. I want to make it my own. So the first contrast for me was we were recharging underneath the ashram, and the ashram was, there was a lot of garbage around the ashram. At a certain point I also used the bathroom in the ashram. I don't want to describe you the bathroom because I would ruin this lecture, but this discourse. But there was a lot of contrast. There was a little bit of a lack of taking care, I must say. And then I tried to enter my yogic state. So we went in front of her room, which was closed with a true gate, and we made a kirtan. We sang to Ananda Moima very beautifully. And so we entered into communion with her. And slowly, this communion manifested within me. And Ma, the mother, became ever more mine, where before she was a person, a character of the autobiography of a yogi, I could feel her within me, who knows me more than anyone else, and who knows me and helps me. And this strengthened within me this perception even more when I went there by myself. So another thing of contrast was the world so full of contrasts, like in Varanasi. It seems that the karma is there, comes up, and is immediately worked out. I could see that there is so much noise. Indians seem to be devotees of noise. We saw a puja near the Ganges, and I must be honest, I didn't perceive anything deep. It was just so loud, and all these pujas and ceremonies from the past didn't yet have amplifiers in the past. So now they do have amplifiers, and everything is on the fullest, on the loudest volume. And when I go to a restaurant, I often ask if the radio or the television or the music can be lowered. But at the same time, when you observe the people walking at the Ganges, the people themselves have a grace. All the Indian people, they have a grace in them. They live in their heart. They have a beauty, a grace that somehow compensates all of this terrible noise that is around you in India. Indian car, it doesn't matter if you have good tires or if you have good brakes. The most important thing is that you have a good horn, and because they like honk all the time. And sometimes when you are riding and you don't hear anything, it seems almost that there's something wrong. But behind all of this, there is a grace. There you can perceive the silence behind this noise. Every person that I maybe had to ask something, I would look this person into its eyes, and I could see in their eyes something that compensated this terrible, omnipresent noise. I wanted to share, in closing, revealing how beautiful it is to have the instrument of meditation when you travel the world. So one time I was with a friend many years ago, and we went to the Porziuncola in Santa Maria degli Angeli, and she had more touristic attitude. I was already a yogi, and maybe for her it was the first time. But when I enter church, I sit with a straight spine and I try to perceive what's around me. And this friend, she would go around and I look at everything, and this friend told me, "What are you doing with your eyes closed? They are beautiful things to look at." But the beautiful thing of the life of a yogi is that you can always go inside, look inside, even in the midst of chaos, and trying to feel what's really there. So this meditation is described by Yogananda in its poem Samadhi. Before in the reading we had a description, but later in the same chapter there's a poem that Yogananda wrote about Samadhi, and one very important line is when he says, "This celestial Samadhi comes from deeper, longer, ever more thirsty meditation, by God-given meditation." So if we want that in our lives there is an ever more present perception of God, active perception of God, then we need to make our meditations longer, deeper, thirstier. So if you meditate 5 minutes a day, make it 10. If you meditate 30 minutes, make it 40. If you meditate an hour, make it an hour and a half. The meditation will become deeper, especially when we have finished our techniques and we remain in silence and we focus on letting go, on relaxation, not physical, that we do with yoga, but on relaxing into our meditation, into mental relaxation. Try to understand how you can mentally relax. Ever thirstier meditation. In the beginning we have said that if we idealize someone, it's based on desires, and the desires bring us in many different directions. But for meditation, the pure desire must be focused. It must become a one-pointed desire, the thirst for God. And this might not be a natural thing that just happens, but we must cultivate it in the most deepest part of ourselves. And then it says this in this poem, it's a guru-given meditation. So if you have a guru, we share here the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda and the line of his gurus, our gurus, which is the line of Kriya Yoga. If you have a guru and he gives you Kriya Yoga, then you have two blessings. One, that you have received it from a guru, so you practice it with him. And the other blessing is the technique itself, which is highly evolutionary. If you practice and forget that what you have received is a gift of the guru, you will lose at least half of the spiritual efficiency. But if you ask your guru always to help you in your meditation with a sense of gratitude, then your meditation will become complete. And each one of us, we will arrive to this, we will get to this divine self-sufficiency that only Divine Mother can give us. Thank you.